All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Hansen. Well, like most people at LabKey, I actually wear a number of different hats. I'm the director of user education, which means I do a lot of training for new users and dedicated clients to help find solutions for them and their data problems. And I'm also on the sales team, and I help a lot with arranging demos and working with new prospects to try to show them around the platform and get them acquainted with it and help them evaluate LabKey for their needs. I'm pretty experienced with kind of evaluating software generally. And so I wanted to share with you today some kind of principles around shopping for software, and especially around software for clinical data management and working with clinical studies. I should also say this presentation is being recorded, and we are going to post it on YouTube, and we're going to share it with, I'll share that link with all of you once it's been posted. So for the agenda today, I want to, first of all, just look at the challenges that people have around working with their study data and their clinical data. What are the pain points? What do they struggle with? Second, let's take a look at software solutions, what they're like, what you should expect from them, and what they can offer you. And then third, I want to begin building a roadmap for evaluating these software solutions. Software is not easy to evaluate. You sort of start shopping for software and you get hit with a lot of acronyms and a lot of buzzwords, and they all kind of start to sound the same after a while. I want to really help you build some kind of a more vivid sense of what software is about and what it can do, and help you be able to distinguish sort of powerful software from software that's maybe not going to work out for you. And so if I could accomplish anything today, it would be to communicate to you, to give you some confidence around trying to kind of tell the difference between different kind of softwares and sort of what it all means, and again, just give you a more vivid sense of being able to pick through it all. So first of all, actually, I thought we should maybe just do some vocabulary. Like, there's a lot of acronyms in this world, and it's kind of nice to know them and be familiar with them. So first of all, CDMS, a clinical data management system. This is really what we're focusing on today, is this kind of system. And this is a piece of software that really helps you work with kind of what it says, the data around a clinical study. It helps you clean the data, helps you build appropriate reports around the data, helps you secure the data. So CDMS, this is a clinical data management system. Again, it sort of helps you with the data sort of once you've acquired it, helps you clean the data, validate the data, secure the data, collaborate around the data, share the data, things like that, especially in a clinical context. CTMS, clinical trial management system. There's not an obvious difference between a CDMS and a CTMS, but I think by convention, a CTMS tends to be more oriented toward the operational side of clinical studies. So these help people recruit participants. They help people conduct the study. Maybe they'll send you notifications about blood draws that need to happen or something like that, or regulatory deadlines or things like that. CDR, this is a clinical data repository. This is a general term for any kind of database or warehouse that holds clinical data. These typically are designed to hold sort of the galaxy of different kind of clinical data. The medical histories, the imagery, the clinical notes, the exam reports, etc. A CRF. This is a case report form. This is a form that a clinician will fill out as part of a study. And they're typically designed to just capture the data points that the study's interested in. They're often paper. So there's a distinction between a CRF, which is often like a piece of paper on a clipboard, and then somebody will be filling it out as you give them information during a visit in the study. And then there's an eCRF, an electronic case report form. And this is similar, like but it's just say on a web page or something you'd fill out on a tablet and capture that information electronically. EDCS, this is just the system that does the capture of the CRF, the case report form. And I'm also going to use the word study a lot in this presentation. And by study, I mean something pretty broad. It's supposed to be pretty intuitive to you, but this is really meant to refer to all the different kinds of clinical studies that are out there, like interventional studies, observational studies, drug trial studies, cohort studies. There's dozens of them that names people use. And I really sort of want to refer to them all. If they have something in common, if I were dare to define them, I would say that all of these studies attempt to measure organism performance over time and then compare different groups of organisms, say the group of people that got the drug versus the group of people that are just in the control group or something. So those are some of the terms that you'll often see in this world. So some of the common challenges that people will encounter when they're working with clinical data is, first of all, siloed data. Often the data in clinical studies is in different systems. It'll be in medical histories will be in some legacy database. Or assay results and test results will come out of a assay instrument. Or there'll be questionnaires that are filled out on paper. These are all different data capture systems. And so that can be really painful to sort of get all this data together in one place. Also, the data is often in different formats like Excel files or PDFs or some database format or something. And that's also really can be quite a challenge to get all these different formats together and talking to one another and being able to kind of interweave them. Second group of challenges is around just data quality. For example, often data can be really messy, especially when it's like being captured by all these different people in different places with different ideas of what the data should look like. So often this data needs to be clean and kind of combed out, validated, and put through a QC process. Software is great at that. And so oftentimes people look to a CDMS. Also that, even when people get the data kind of cleaned up, it still needs to be sort of aligned and ready for kind of report ready, analysis ready. And that can mean aligning the data around the most important aspects or dimensions of the data, like being able to align the data around participant IDs or around the different time points and visits inside the study. Also, the data needs to be sufficiently clean to be reproducible. You need to be able to you need to be able to demonstrate that the final report of your study, the final reports of your study, you need to know that they came from the actual core data and need to be able to demonstrate that. And only clean data that's well structured is going to be capable of that. And then a third group of common challenges is around data security. You need to be able to provide proper access control to your data. You know, only the right people should be able to see it, and the wrong people shouldn't be able to see it. Also, people want to get their data kind of publishing ready. For example, they maybe want to provide some de-identification around the data or special handling for PHI data. They want to provide audit trails around the data and have intensive logging. And then finally, it looks like this is cut off a bit on my screen, but they want to provide regulatory compliance around all the various government regulations that surround clinical data. At this point, actually, we'd love to hear from you about your challenges around managing clinical study data. There's a polls button. If you kind of hover around Zoom, you'll be able to find a polls button. So give that a click, and please, provide a little bit of detail about what kind of challenges you face when you're working with this kind of data. And we'll revisit that as you enter the data. Okay, well, what kind of benefits those are the problems. What are the kind of benefits that you can expect when you're working with the CDMS? Well, first off, you're going to have better data quality. You're going to be able to do things like provide enforcement checks around the data as the data is being entered, and provide QC workflows and monitoring on the data. This is going to minimize manual entry, which is very error prone. And it's also going to provide, the software is going to provide a common data entry method for all the different personnel in your study that are entering data, and for all perhaps remote sites that are entering data. You're also going to see improved data structure. Now, what's the point of that? Well, data structure provides a much better foundation for analyzing your data and for providing reporting around the data. And you're going to avoid a lot of the issues that can develop later around having sort of wild data. Like Excel, is a great data format. But it's not very structured. You can sort of do whatever you want. It's like a scratch pad or a sketch pad, and that can create a lot of problems later on. You're going to see enhanced collaboration. When you are working with the CDMS, you're building sort of one source of truth, a single access point for everybody to go to on the team. And that is just naturally going to provide more efficient coordination and workflows for your team. And CDMS naturally provide a better foundation for regulatory compliance. There's rigorous auditing generally built in. And in general, you're going to have a much more precise picture of who has seen what data and why. So what should you look for in CDMS? I've really laid out 8 principles here, and I really want to get into these in detail, but just to quickly summarize these. First, look for support around diverse data types and diverse data formats, because most likely you're going to have to be dealing with those kind of data formats. Second, look for easy data capture and lots of different methods of data capture. Third, is the data easy to work with, especially when you're working with diverse data and heterogeneous data? Fourth, does the system have an orientation toward clinical concepts and the challenges around that data? Like, does the system know what a participant ID is? Does it know what a visit is? Or are these just sort of generic things to the system? Fifth, 5 and 6 are really similar. They're sort of two sides of the same coin. 5, does the system provide a rich reporting system, and does it let you query the data and begin your analysis internally? And then 6, does the system provide support for external analytic systems? And I mean things like RStudio and Tableau and things like that. 7, is the system actively developed and supported? Does it have like a development team behind it? Is there a community surrounding it that's active and vital? And 8, does it provide robust security and regulatory compliance? And I would even add 9 here. What what does the export look like from the system? At one point, your study is going to be finished, and you may not be, and you may want to export the data from the CDMS. Are those export formats provided? Are they proprietary and really difficult to deal with? The kind of things that you need to go back to the CDMS to even open up and see? Or are they easy human readable data formats like Excel or TSV or something like that? That's easily transported to somewhere else. Before I kind of jump into some details here, is there any questions, Will, that I should know, or even actually, could you any interesting results from the poll that we should know about?
No questions. I just shared the results now.
Great,
Uh,
great, super. Well, let's also, I should say, folks, feel free to ask questions as we go. There's a Q&A button. And I'll ask a few times, kind of break in and ask for questions as we go. And I'm going to leave plenty of time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So let's go through these 8 principles. Like, first, you want to make sure the system supports diverse data types and formats. In general, this is a hallmark of clinical study. You're going to see different kinds of data, and I mean like sample data, assay data, clinical data, demographic data, medical histories, imagery, case, report forms, treatment report forms, all this kind of stuff. And you're going to want to be able to capture all that stuff and latch it together. Also, you're going to see all those different data formats: Excel, TSV, text, novel instrument formats you've never seen before. You're going to want to be able to ingest those. And also, you should generally look for a system that is flexible and shapes to your data, not the other way around. You shouldn't have to be bending over backwards to get your data into the system. A system that doesn't allow you many custom fields, that's to be, perhaps a danger sign. Whereas a system that provides you lots of customization around fields and the shapes that really conforms to the shape of your data as it already is, that's something to really watch for. There's a few ways that LabKey can really help. We do provide, we have a strong awareness of the different data types that are really kind of domain specific. Like, we have a concept of a sample, and we have a concept of an assay design and whatnot. And we're also famously flexible. We make it really easy to design data tables around your data as it already exists. Next, you should also make sure that the system provides easy data capture. There should be many modes of data capture, like a manual mode, but also perhaps a built-in survey or EDC, electronic data capture system. Also, you definitely want to make sure the system can import in bulk, like it provides a file import. And then also perhaps, look for sort of the more, if you like, fancier ways to import data, like perhaps it can support automated import without really any human intervention off an instrument or something like that. Make sure also that there's strong data validation and import enforcement rules. For example, does the system allow you to mark some fields as required input versus optional input? Does the system allow you to constrain entry, say, to a drop-down of values, or to constrain entry to a range of numeric values? Like, you only want, if you're trying to capture this concept of a percentage field, does it allow you to constrain the values between 0 and 100, something like that? Also, does it provide a post-acquisition QC workflow support? So does it give you a way to sort of annotate the data and say, this data is good, or this data might be a problem and we should exclude it? Also, does it let you make a mistake? Sometimes you simply make a mistake on import and you want to be able to correct it. Ideally, the system will actually capture that correction, unless you kind of let your auditors go and see that there was a mistake and then you correct it. LabKey helps in really all these ways. We do provide a really quite a diverse toolkit for your data input with all kinds of QC features and validation features. Also, does the system make the data easy to work with, especially heterogeneous data that you're going to be working with? Like, does it give you an easy way to join and interweave that data that's coming from all these different sources? Does it let you do that through, say, can a non-coder do that? Or does it require somebody with knowledge of SQL or some programming language to do that for you? Ideally, that's going to be, this is that kind of working in sophisticated ways with the data and joining it in sophisticated ways. Ideally, the system makes that easy for you, perhaps with a graphical user interface. That's also something LabKey can do. Again, another important point here, does the system have built-in clinical concepts? Does it know what a participant is, a specimen, a cohort? Another thing, does the system provide more sophisticated ways to constrain values and harmonize data, say based on like a clinical ontology like SNOMED or LOINC or something? These are features that LabKey natively supports. It actually, in the LabKey CDMS, we parse your data for things like participant IDs and time points, and we sort of understand what they are. We know what to do with that data, and we also support really the clinical ontology of your choice. You can import multiple clinical ontologies and constrain your data entry by using them, and also harmonize your data using those ontologies. You should also be asking, what kind of reporting and analytics does this system support? First of all, does it have an internal built-in system for creating visualizations, for looking at statistics, for querying the data and reporting on the data? Second, does it support external data analytic systems? Is it easy to export into those systems? Is it easy to integrate with those systems like Tableau and RStudio and whatnot? And then at a more sophisticated level, does it provide sort of standard data access methods like ODBC and JDBC? And at the kind of the highest level of integration, does it really support direct integration with popular programming languages? Like I'm talking here about like API access into your data, like Python or JavaScript. Again, LabKey can really help in all of these ways. We provide an internal reporting system. We have great support for external systems, and we also have a very rich API. Is the system actively developed and supported? Like, here's what you should be looking for: things like, is the software regularly updated? Like, does it have multiple updates a year on a regular schedule? Or is it something that has been sort of sitting fallow for a couple of years? Another thing to also keep in mind is like, is the UI modern? Is it easy to use, or is it sort of old and kind of look like the 90s? That's a sign that this system isn't really actively worked on and may not have adequate architecture behind it. And another thing that I think is really important is to look for a real vendor partner. Not only does it like have frequent upgrades, but does the vendor really provide support and training and hosting? And even beyond that, does it have a way to really listen to you and provide customer-driven enhancement and fixes? Or do you sense that the vendor is just kind of off in their own world and on their own agenda, isn't really tracking your needs in detail? Another thing to look for in a vendor is like simple, transparent pricing. And I just think this is one of the great hallmarks of LabKey, is our relationship skills with our customers. Really, our product roadmaps are based on closely tracked customer requests. The first thing we do when we're trying to decide what to develop is we look at our list of customer needs that are outstanding in our backlog. And in general, when you're working with LabKey, you're going to be able to have direct engagement with the service team, people like me and my partners, and with the dev team. And then finally, does the system provide robust security and compliance? And by this, I mean, does it have a way to integrate with the authentication systems that might already be in place at your institution? Say like two-factor authentication. Does it support that? And does it support different levels of access? Like, is there a difference between a reader and an editor and an admin? These are all different kind of relationships you can have with the data. And does it provide an easy way to kind of partition the data, to wall off different parts of the data for different audiences? And finally, does it like support compliance regulations like HIPAA and CRF Part 11? Excuse me. So next, I really want to round this out by just starting to look at how to evaluate a CDMS and choose one, and some kind of give you a methodology for doing this. But before I turn to the final part of the presentation here, any questions you think are relevant right out there, Will? Or
We had one question here.
yeah.
Do you have examples of automated import from EHR systems such as Epic?
We have certainly dealt with that in the past. And we do have a number of kind of automated pipelines that we can build around any kind of data. I mean, Epic is famously difficult to pull data out of, but we actually have had clients with success who pulled their data out of Epic and got it into LabKey. So it is possible. It's a big question, and honestly, it's a perfect question to ask in more detail with our sales and developer team at some point. Maybe at the end of the presentation, some LabKey personnel out there will jump in and give a little more detail on that. I've pretty much, that's as much as I know about it at this point, but it's a great question. Great. Well, let's take a look at like how to evaluate, how to actually choose a CDMS. And here's just a quick algorithm that I've put together to kind of help you. I mean, first is just kind of, maybe this is the most important thing, is really gather your own requirements. Become aware of what you need. What are your pain points? What are you struggling with? Write them down. Make a list. What are the problems you want to solve? Second, survey the product options. Like go shopping, look around. What are the, do some Google searches, click around. Third, make a short list of options. These are vendors you're really going to contact, and you're going to go dive deep with them. You're going to begin to build a relationship with them. And then finally, when you have enough information, you can choose and implement. Now, this is not a linear process, and it can be quite time consuming. Often you'll get to 3 and you'll learn some things that are available that you didn't even know existed. And that might force you to go back up to rethink your requirements gathering. So it's the classic situation where you didn't know you needed it until you knew that there was a solution for it. So you'll have, this can be a kind of a looping process, an iterative process. But I think it's at least an algorithm to start with. So let's kind of take a look at these steps here. First is gathering requirements. Honestly, I think this could be its own webinar this year, but just a few considerations around this. First, what are your needs and priorities? Make a list. What are your pain points? Make a list of them. And you should also be open to evolving requirements. Your initial assessments might be incomplete or based on false assumptions that you discover later you need to revise. And again, as you become acquainted with the options, you're going to find your requirements might change. And also keep in mind, a good vendor will help you refine these requirements. They might even kind of challenge you. In any case, They will help you ask the right questions, help you become aware of needs and your priorities as part of a dialogue. And another thing to keep in mind when you're evaluating is kind of the user experience. Like, is the software easy to use? Is it relatively self-explanatory and discoverable, like just by clicking around? Or do you constantly need to consult the docs? Are you constantly sort of puzzled by the next steps? A good CDMS will kind of be something that sort of unfolds and is salient to just clicking around. Also, what's the implementation effort going to look like? Is it going to be weeks, months, years? You should have a sense of that as you evaluate. And finally, is this software easy to learn and adopt to? Because you're going to have to bring it, or your organization is going to want to be attracted to the software and adopt it for success. So ask, does the vendor provide assistance? Is training provided? What's the state of the documentation? And again, is there an active community around it that shares information? I just think the vendor experience, I think, is just really important for this process. And so some principles, some questions to ask about your vendor. Does the vendor demonstrate engagement in the evaluation process? Do they seem interested in you? Are they asking you questions instead of you asking them questions all the time? Are they focused on your needs and goals? You should just be able to get a sense of that fairly quickly. Another thing to keep in mind, does the vendor provide references to other clients? And does the vendor have transparent pricing? And in general, like, your evaluation relationship is going to be a preview of your customer relationship. It's likely going to feel the same. It's the culture of the company is going to emerge fairly quickly. So keep that in mind. Another thing I think is really important in this search is getting some hands-on experience. And I think I've sort of outlined 3 levels of what hands-on can mean in this realm. First, it's just to get, say, a trial version of the software. Load your data into it, run some of your analyses and reports, and see if you like it. Like, was that a good experience? Was it easy enough to use? And this would be sort of like a self-guided sort of a hands-on experience. But I think a higher quality vendor will provide deeper levels of hands-on experience. And by this, I mean, we'll call this, the second level is called a guided trial. We'll call it that. And this is a free trial of the product, but where the vendor provides some training and some support, say, to help you get your data in, or just kind of to point you in the right direction. Maybe the vendor can schedule a series of meetings to sort of help you get acquainted with the product, with your data in it. And third, the most intense kind of engagement in this way is sometimes called a proof of concept, or we call it a SDE, a solution design engagement. And this is a more dedicated pilot program where we bring your data into the system and really start to sort of build up the solution and really give you a much more vivid sense of what the solution is going to feel like. We definitely support this level of engagement at LabKey, and we really recommend it. That's really the great way to get a sense of the product. And best of all, like, the work you do, let's say you get 10% of the work done, you can, if you decide to go with that vendor, you're already 10% of the way done. You can kind of continue from there to finish your project. Well, so what's next? I think at this point, we'd love to hear from you. Really having real conversations is really the best way to engage with a vendor. We certainly look forward to that. We want, the first thing we're going to ask you is, what are your pain points? What are you trying to do with your data? And that can really kick off a relationship to help you learn about the solutions LabKey proposes, and so that we can learn about what kind of work you want to do and what kind of issues you're facing. And you can do that on labkey.com and look for like a link. I think it's a request a demo link or whatnot. At this point, that's really all I wanted to say today. But I'd love to hear some questions and the poll results if you have anything interesting from that, Will.
Yes, so all results are up there now. Looks like the majority of folks are having trouble with siloed data in different systems and formats, and they're kind of split evenly between the data cleaning, the validation and QC, and the data sharing, security, and compliance. And we do have a few questions here.
Yeah, please.
For auditing purposes, does the user have to provide audit entry for every data query? Can you give an example of this while using your system?
If I get I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but I think the answer with LabKey is kind of everything is audited kind of natively. It's kind of hard not to get things audited in LabKey. That said, so there's a baseline level of auditing. We really track like kind of all logins, all data changes, really everything. We also provide enhanced logging in the clinical space, especially around PHI data, where that's where we can do sort of real auditing that gives your auditors a sense of who's seen which data and why did they see it? Like, what was their justification for seeing it? That's kind of the enhanced logging that's available around clinical data. I hope I'm getting the question right. So please follow up if I'm not hearing your question.
Okay, another question. Versus less dynamic, I guess, static products in the market, how can LabKey address change and evolution over time and changing needs?
Yeah. Well, I think LabKey is famously flexible. You, I, you know, we try to work with your data as is. Like the first thing you're going to do when you try to put your data in LabKey is say it's in an Excel file, is just show the Excel file to LabKey, and it will make its best guess at an appropriate data table to capture that Excel file. So if you have, say your data format changes midstream or something, that it might be as easy as just simply changing its data table analog inside of LabKey. Also, from a broader perspective, LabKey is actively developed. Like we put out a production level version of the software every 4 weeks. And we're constantly looking at the state of the industry, trying to put in new ideas and innovations and new features into the product, both features that are requested by clients and features that we sort of detect out there in the marketplace. I hope that answers. I hope I'm getting your question. And if not, please just ask a follow-up.
Okay, if we're running a study and don't currently have a CDMS, is it advisable to try and implement a CDMS during an ongoing study?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, you can. It's always great to have a CDMS. I think. I don't think it's necessarily hugely daunting to move your data into a CDMS. Not in all cases, and it may be quite plausible. It might make it a lot easier ultimately to move out of sort of a wild system, a homegrown system, into something say more standard. So yeah, it's certainly worth considering. And it's certainly not off the table.
Okay. We don't have the budget. We don't have the development resources or budget to hire. Do CDMSs always require custom dev or implementation budgets?
No, not at all. We have a community edition of LabKey that hundreds of people have had great success with building studies in. They don't require developers and they don't require budgets. It just requires your time. And so there are definitely options for people with sort of lower resources out there. And I don't want you to give the impression that you need a developer to work with the CDMS, certainly not the LabKey CDMS. That's not at all. In fact, it's really designed for ordinary users and non-developers.
Okay. You've talked about data. What about integrating with third-party systems and software?
Yeah.
I imagine LabKey SDMS would reside centrally within a research environment. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. We have, we really call ourselves a data integration platform and a system integration platform. We are able to integrate with all kinds of different systems, like different database implementations, to pull data into. Different lab instruments are able to directly load data into the system as well, using various mechanisms. And then on the outbound side, we have all kinds of integrations, really with, say, analytic systems, again, like Tableau and RStudio and MATLAB and SAS and whatnot. And, also, that list is actually really larger than I could even state. Really, the way to think about it is any system that can connect over ODBC or JDBC can be connected to LabKey server. So the options are really quite open-ended. And if we don't, say, have direct experience with integration with some system X, it's certainly worth trying. It's certainly worth asking us about or trying yourself to see if it'll work. And if it doesn't work right away or you hit problems, let us know and we'll work with you to make it happen.
This is a follow-up to the question about auditing.
Yeah.
So for accessing new data, is there an audit entry? After you get access, you can perform exploratory data analysis without any more audit comments and entries. This is what I understood.
Yeah, yes, I think that is generally the behavior for LabKey. That doesn't mean that your actions are not recorded by the server. Generally, most or all of your actions are recorded by the server once you're in the system. But you're typically not if this is your question, do I need to continually authenticate myself? No. Once you've done initial authentication, you don't need to do it again, say to access, say, a given report or to perform a certain analysis or something like that. Typically, now that is provided that you have sufficient access. If not everybody, there are different levels of access in LabKey, and they're really quite fine grained. Administrators will give you, a certain level of access. That doesn't mean you can just do everything in the system. Maybe they'll give you something as simple as just a reader access. That won't let you. That's relatively limited. Whereas if you want to, say, run code on the system, you're going to need to get some sort of developer access to the system. Again, I hope I'm getting your question. And if not, we can follow up offline.
Okay, and then the final question here. If we wanted to move the LabKey. Is there help with the migration effort as well as support for the change management effort?
Yeah, absolutely. We help you really through the whole implementation system, starting with migration. We've done this hundreds of times with clients, and we're really quite skilled at it. So, absolutely, yes.
Okay, that's all we have.
Yeah, super. Well, again, thanks so much for attending, and hope you found this useful. And watch for the video links that we'll be sending out in the next few days. All right, thanks, everybody.